Shows things that have it's $20. That's the cost of knowledge. So cheap.
But I'm a little apprehensive about the security part of it. Like I'm not talking about us. I'm saying in general, in ChatGPT, a couple of days ago, I had trouble. They didn't say no.
I think a relevant ad than a non-relevant one, to be honest.
They're definitely they're not harmful.
I think it's a generation of the company, and then he basically had access to.
Good evening, everybody. I am Abhay Sardesai. I am the director of the Shantilal K. Somaiya School of Art. May I please request all of you to come? And we've all assembled here to actually have a really lively discussion about what learning is all about. What are the various transactions that one enters into emotionally, philosophically, and ontologically. When one sort of starts learning, when one starts asking difficult questions about the act of pedagogy, about the art of teaching, as it were. We have 4 extraordinarily gifted people, all from Bombay, at the moment at least. And we are very thankful really to have Puja amongst us. Puja is the person who manages this extraordinary space. And thank you, Puja. The show that you actually see around you has been curated by her. Puja has been the curator for almost a couple of years now. Yeah?
5 years.
5? Oh my God, 5 years. She's a curator, she's an educator, she's an artist. And she was earlier a curator at the Dr. Bhaudajil Art Museum of Art. She's held teaching positions at MSU Baroda's Faculty of Fine Arts. She's taught at the Delhi College of Art and also at the KRVI in Juhu. We have Reena Saini Kallat, one of my favorite artists. Reena is a very well-known figure. She's a Mumbai-based multidisciplinary artist whose practice, rooted in archival research, critically engages with history, collective memory, identity, and perception through careful considerations of material. Her work has been widely exhibited at leading institutions, including the Museum of Modern Art in New York, Tate Modern in London, the Migros Museum of Contemporary Art in Zurich. Her works are held in several major private and public collections. We have Siddharth Somaiya, who is an entrepreneur with a deep commitment to art and education. He works at the intersection of culture, technology, and academia. He's the founder of 80 Days, a travel tech AI company, and co-creator of Immerse, an artist and curator-based residency in India. He's also the chairman of the Board of Studies at the Dr. Shantilal K. Somaiya School of Art and is a member of the Academic Council at Somaiya Vidyavihar University, the same place where I am the director. Siddharth is committed to reimagining arts education in India. And then, of course, we have the redoubtable Krishnamachari Bose. Bose, as everybody knows, is an artist, curator, and scenographer. His art education was initiated at the Kerala Kalapeetham, the Sir J.J. School of Arts in Mumbai, and culminated with the Masters from Goldsmiths College of Art, University of London. His diverse artistic and curatorial practice includes contemporary art, design, and sciences. Bose is, as we all know, an acclaimed figure and probably better known as the initiator of the Kochi Muziris Biennale. So I welcome all of you, and I welcome all of you really. Please feel free to butt in if you feel that the conversation is not going anywhere, and ask all the difficult questions that you want to ask. I shall actually start with this very interesting quote, where I think it's, there's this axiom really, when you are in any kind of trouble and if you want to have a really good adage, sort of reach out for Oscar Wilde. So I think it's Oscar Wilde who says that a cauliflower is nothing but a cabbage with a college education. And what he really means by this is that if you have the right kind of learning, you can turn a new leaf in a host of capacities, and most importantly, garner opportunities to reinvent yourself in a bouquet of ways, So I'm just sort of starting off with Oscar Wilde. I'm tempted to actually think aloud about the role that knowledge plays in our lives. Knowledge, unfortunately, is being reduced again and again across academic templates into bites of information. not bytes of insight, but bytes of information. Also, maybe sort of, roles and roles of opinions which are convenient to us. So inconvenient truths are not considered to be knowledge enough, as it were, right? So this definition that has unfortunately evolved due to what one might call the vocationalization of education, where educators, pedagogues, politicians, people who are patrons start believing that knowledge has to be employed in a way, it has to have a utility value, has led to this unfortunate equation between knowledge and information. It's become a concatenation of what one might call constructed facts. But knowledge, as we also know, is power, and we don't really need somebody like Michel Foucault to tell us that. We all know that there is a kind of a caste system, a kind of a class system that evolves between people with different levels of knowledge. If I have more knowledge than you, there is a possibility that I am standing at a higher level than you are. And knowledge in our context is also about access to language. If I speak English in a certain manner, there is a possibility that I am considered or I am taken more seriously than you are if you don't speak the language with as much fluency as I do. So there are a whole host of issues that converge and that inflect our understanding of teaching and learning. What is unfortunately lost is the possibility of understanding knowledge as a source of pleasure, And as we were all growing up, we were reading like Amar Chitra Katha or Indrajal comics, reading maybe, Gotia or reading William Shakespeare. We were actually enjoying the process of garnering insight upon insight from all that we were participating in as readers. Now that's something that I hope to actually bring back to the act of reading, writing, understanding, appreciating, all of it enshrined in this institution that we are proposing in the name of Dr. Shantilal K. Somaiya School of Art. But more about that later. To come back to our formidable participants and panelists, one of the things that I'm really curious about all of you are trained artists, I realize, and in spite of the fact that Siddharth runs a company and both of you are extraordinarily important artists representing India in various diverse spaces and also head certain institutional initiatives. And Puja is a curator. So in spite of all the different roles that you play, your primary sort of education has been in the field of art pedagogy. I'm really curious to know about how you would choose to look back at the experience of spending so much time in an art school. And the rider to this question is, how exactly do you feel when you look back? Did you grow in the art school? What were the blessings? What were the boons? What were the defects? What were the deficiencies? Siddharth?
Okay. I studied at the Art Institute of Chicago. I did my Bachelor's of Fine Art over there. This was quite a powerful moment in my life when I look back on it, but when we did our one-year art history foundation, Indian art history was one page in a one-year program. Now, of course, it's education in that context, but when I came back in 2015 or so, I told my uncle that we should start an art school, and he said, study art education and come back. And that's when I did a course at Bhaudaji Lad, where Abhay was my guru, and that's when I think my mind got decolonized. I think I realized the power of a relevant art education for the context that you come from. And I think that really opened up my mind to recognizing that art is ultimately a vehicle of culture, and art is where knowledge is also created, which I think that really changed the way I look at art.
But what were the courses like in the School of the Art Institute of Chicago that really reached out to you?
The courses that, I mean,
you did technology, didn't you?
Yeah, I studied technology in the Art Institute of Chicago. I think technology really intimidated me back then. It also, of course, it's by design meant to be extremely dynamic and intimidating. But I think it was that porosity between art and tech that really opened up my mind to what one could create in a extremely relevant, dynamic curriculum today. Because I feel like if we can create new curriculum in that context, we could be actually aiding to the arts ecosystem that exists today, which is extremely dynamic, fast-paced, and usually it's faster than curriculum. So if curriculum can set the trend, that would be interesting. So that was my experience.
Absolutely fascinating. We'll come back to AI and ChatGPT and get you to speak a little more about that. But coming to Reena and Bose, both of you hail from the august environs of the JJ School of Art. And you've had extraordinary experiences there, haven't you? Especially Bose.
You want me to start?
Yes. What was it like?
Yeah, it was great because I felt, I would say great, at the same time I would go back, say no. There are, what was most beautiful or great things about JJ is the campus. And if you look at the literature, you know, who was born there? Kipling was born in that bungalow.
Yes, yes.
And then it's also, there is a hierarchy I used to see. There is a kind of class I used to see. Architecture students look down upon applied art students. Applied art students look down upon printmakers and fine art students. And fine art students were lost everywhere. And what was great about that space was the central part of the college. You know, we used to have a lovely cafe, or terrible cafe. That cafe really meant a lot. That's a place I met some of the incredible minds come out of JJ, or also spent most of my time after my work. So in that sense, I believe that, you know, whenever you start an institution, cafeterias, you make more and more cafeterias for conversations. Not sit like that. I would say that, you know, sit around and have that was a kind of, I had intimate conversations with almost all the best minds coming out of JJ. Reena was one of the most enthusiastic students. And I remember spending a lot of time with a lot of young contemporaries. They are all, I am proud to say they are all contemporary stars of contemporary art in India. You know, you can name anybody contemporary with Reena and others. So that conversations, I think it was very, very important. I used to speak to her almost every day. So I was also chucked out of JG because I critiqued the institution. So we can say that, you know, like, I organized a program called Safdar Hashmi Memorial Trust.
Yes.
One of the most important exhibition, 300 artists put together their small work, 1 square feet art exhibits at the architecture campus, and 20 banners painted by eminent artists, Tayyab Mehta onwards, too. I was also part of that. I'm very happy that I was part of that large
This was
scale.
1989?
No, it was in 1992.
92.
92, yeah. It's after the, you know, Babri Masjid and Artists Against
But
Communalism.
Hashmi was killed in 89, 90.
Yeah, I think, but that organization run by Vivan Sundaram and, Sahmat
Yes.
was, really Vivan was behind.
Yes, yes.
And a lot of my friends, young students, I remember my colleagues, Kiran Telkar, I think he's in Kolhapur somewhere right now working. So he and myself used to run around, and friends like her and, Jagdish and others used to help put together, Justin, Shilpa, many others were there, like I'm not talking about names now, but I think it was a great time. I was struck out because, I critiqued the institution, what is not there. What is there is everybody knows. What is not there, I mentioned it in the press. During the time of the Subnet exhibition, the Times took an interview. I said what is lacking in the institution. So they asked me to send, why did you say this, So I had a very good friend, I have a very good friend, Ranjit Hoskote, and myself sat together and written 1.5-page letter to the dean, and an April Fool day I was rusticated from the college.
Guy Fawkes.
But for me it was great that so many people came up and helped me. There was a person called Mahendra Doshi. He's given me a place for stay. There's an art collector, Shakira, and Nagari given me a studio space in Mahim.
Wow.
And this is all, and Girish Shahane asked me to come and stay at his place. Actually, I was staying in a hotel when I came back from the US later. But these are the kind of things, I have made incredible relationship with people. People create culture. That is what I believe that I learned it from JJ through conversations with my tutors. I'm not saying there were some fantastic minds were there, but they were not up to date or not updated themselves in the international art scene. Lack of books, lack of information, lack of journals. This was the things I critiqued. There was no photography studio, there was no dark room, there was no computer, there were so many other things, So I stop it here because, like otherwise others won't get time.
We're all ears.
I mean, a lot of, no, I first want to really congratulate both of you for this wonderful initiative, this much needed, I mean, the kind
Siddharth's
of education
idea.
that has been lacking in this city for decades. I mean, we've all grown up in an environment where we managed to do, despite all the difficulties and the challenges, while what Bose said about the institution, I mean, JJ School of Art has a great legacy. It's a fantastic institution that, we all were excited to be part of. And if it wasn't for really fellow artists and peers, I think it would have really been difficult because, like we spoke, that it was really at a time in the 90s when we were at a complete disconnect from, what we were being taught, because art history itself sort of would end with pop art and op art in the 60s and the 70s, and we're talking nearly 20 years, over 2 decades of a complete void. And that was a big challenge because, like Bose said, that it was a time when there was no internet, and I mean, the access to books was very limited because the library had books up to a certain, and so we were constantly, I mean, Bose was of course a vital figure in the art school. He's been responsible for turning around a lot of young students' approach to art, how they connected themselves with the larger ecosystem. He was a disruptor, he was a lot of things, and he played that role of bringing people together, whether they were, I mean, he was really one of those key figures that, and of course, I mean, our professors were, I would say, foundational years. The first couple of years you learned skills, you learned how to draw, and for that JJ is fairly good. I mean, there is rigor in the way drawing is taught, you were fantastic at that too. And so that, there was that history of the institute, but there was a huge lacuna. And those of us working at that time really felt that we were giving so many years of our life, they are vital years of our life, and in a sense, I do feel that I left, if I'm not sounding too dramatic, but I felt broken, because in your early years, if you do not get, it's almost like not learning how to structure a sentence. I mean, it's like you're dealing with ideas and you're going through things, but you're not really learning language the way you should be. And that leaves you scarred for life in a way, because you're always sort of, structuring things without having the vocabulary. And so, but I think like without making this too long, I think primarily it was a very interesting environment for the very reasons. And while I enjoyed the support of all the professors, I was like the first class first student, because I had only because of sincerity, and that didn't mean anything, because you just made your submissions in time, and then if you did experiment over and beyond that, it was appreciated. Okay. And so I think that was the key thing, initiative, that you had to really be self-driven. It meant being in various libraries to sort of fill up for all that was amiss. So from USIS, Max Muller Bhavan, to British Council Library, to Moyle Parikh Center, who had very generously opened doors. They would literally open their personal office, right, because they would see that students who are really interested don't have access to books, and because they traveled a lot, Shaila Parikh would sort of bring books from all over her travels, art books, and so those were ways in which, and of course Bose would end up buying some books which we all used to photocopy. So that was a way of then sort of trying to learn through all of these channels. But I think the other thing which we will of course come back to is how much the city teaches you, and whether it's theatre, whether it's film, whether it's poetry circles. I mean, like Bose spoke about Ranjit and Nancy and all of Abhay and all our friends who have enriched our minds in so many other ways, have been really the learning grounds beyond that, extended beyond the college campus. And like he said, the cafe, I was thinking about how much we hung out at, say, Madras Cafe, and there was Samovar, and really those were places where you actually met.
Coming back to Samovar, that is a missing place.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, really, that's a place we have met some of the incredible filmmakers, poets, writers. That should come back.
Absolutely, but hold on to that thought. Let's ask Puja how difficult, how wonderful it was at MSU.
Yeah.
Especially in the times of the Chandramohan incident, if I'm not mistaken.
We will come to that later,
sure,
maybe.
Sure.
But I think a lot of things that both Bose and Reena said connect in terms of the canteen being a place and it being about people that you meet. But I think one of the difference that I find in talking to many of the artists also really made a mark for themselves from JJ is that it's always in variance to what is the school's philosophy or the way of teaching, or the lack of it. So I feel that's probably where it slightly differs, because I feel Baroda, at least for me, I feel it, and for many people, I think it really was the nucleus of art in the city, and Baroda became a place where so many veteran artists have settled because of the college.
Absolutely.
And I think one of the main reasons is because it's the college that was started post-independence in early 1950s. And interestingly, it was set up, like the initial syllabus and all was set up by people from JJ like Hebbar and Bendre and of course KG Subramaniam from Shanti Niketan and Shanko Chaudhary. So I think a lot of these were artists who set up the school. So there was a different sense of liberalism in the college, right? So for instance, anything that anybody wanted to do was okay. Like I even heard from, say, Nalini, even before you, and even before Nalini, say Souza. So there's always been that kind of friction, and maybe because it's an older school with a different kind of legacy, but at the same time, I think JJ also had a lot of other interesting things like the re-art workshops, which have, you know, like other kind of craft making and all, which
I
I
used to be jealous of you guys.
Yeah.
I mean, like, what they used to do, this Baroda boys whom are coming to Bombay, they drop names, man. And, our kids, what is lacking in JJ, I feel, they are incredible with their skill.
Yeah.
The theory and practice should go hand in hand.
Right.
The theory wasn't there.
Yeah.
Of course, history is not theory.
Yes.
Okay, theory is something else. You know, like how many people are aware of the political situation? How many people are aware of the social structure? All these things are important. It comes from that conversations when we have it with intellectuals or poets or You know, I didn't know how to organize programs, but it's to call friends to come and give a talk, and like Ranjit, Jerry, Masood Taj, Arundhati Subramaniam, then film critic and writer, Ashish Rajadesha, all these people used to drop in.
You're dropping names now, Bose.
I mean, like, you know, bringing them to college. You know, no, it wasn't happening. I mean, like, I'm talking about my contemporaries, and nobody, they used to go. I mean, most of them studied abroad. Like your tutors in Baroda, and JJ had opportunities which they didn't use it. Even I have introduced to some international university, but they didn't know how to take it further.
But,
so this is very important when it comes to education. Like Royal College of Art, like you take Ghulam Muhammad Sheikh or others who really worked and brought, and the students gone abroad, Rekha Rodavidya too, many others, really talk about it.
But just sort of hold on to that thought. I just want to ask Puja, sort of a rider to it. Was this confluence between theory and practice something that made the MSU experience very valuable?
Absolutely, because I think so I also studied painting and as an artist. So the first half of the day was practicals, and then post lunch we would have our art history classes.
Wow.
And then of course the art history students had art history specialized classes throughout.
Wow.
And I think like you were bringing the Chandramohan incident, but I feel like that's what Baroda gave me and a lot of people.
Yes,
because
of course.
You felt very passionately involved in everything that was going around. And I was there in Baroda for a decade between 99 to 2009. And of course in 2002 we had the Gujarat riots, which was like a very transformative, it's difficult almost to talk about it, but it was a very transformative period because suddenly the personal, the political kind of conflated in ways that we couldn't imagine, with students and the kind of polarization. But I think the college always came together, and of course there were different factions and things like that. So I feel the atmosphere was very charged. As part of the film club, we organized Anand Patwardhan's film screenings just after the Gujarat riots, and Vivan had come in to do a full workshop and all that. So we had, we were lucky because a lot of the very interesting artists, really thinking minds were in the city, like Ghulam Sheikh, KG Subramaniam, dropping names now. But I'm just saying what it was.
Names of international artists. Kiefer, Francesco Clementi, all that.
But it was really interesting because that time maybe we took it for granted, and as students we were a little more intimidated. But like with Bhupen, with KG, we had workshops, we had classes. I remember 2 classes we did with even Sheikh Bhai. So like, it was a very different, we would, even after classes, you would kind of, it was a small town, I think, so that's also different. So our canteen extended to like these local chai laris on the street also, Vishnu's and places that if any people from Baroda here would know.
How many people from Baroda here? Quite a few.
Okay. Yeah.
Quite a few.
Yeah, so I think it was really intense. So those 10 years was of course marked by, we saw a great change within not only external politics that we were looking at, Gujarat politics, with the riots and all of that, but also within the college and with the change in administration at the high levels like the Vice Chancellor and all of that. So that was in 2007 when the Chandramohan incident happened, which for people who may not know, it was this artist, a student that got unlawfully, without a warrant, arrested for his work. And it kind of became like a really, really big incident in kind of Indian art and education. Many artists from Bombay actually came to protest, and it was one of the really big moment in art to kind of debate on topics like censorship, and we felt it. All this kind of surveillance was also coming more and more into the college. But I feel like, I do feel I was very lucky to go to Baroda. It's a small place, but it's really focused on the art. And the theory and practice part of it being together was, and of course, a lot of things come into place, like of course, art history is taught in English, and there is those kind of issues. What you were saying about, different departments looking down on each other. For us, we had museology in the center of the fine arts. And museology was like a forgotten, like we didn't know any of the museology students, And maybe that could have been a very interesting, like now that I'm working in museums, those, I feel like there could have been a connection there, and also applied art, So as far as the teaching was concerned, art teaching, I think it was brilliant, but yes, they did not teach skill, they do not teach you how to paint, but you learn to develop a very critical kind of gaze into what you're doing, almost, for me it was almost I became too critical at one point, I think. But
you know what, sort of, all what you guys have been saying, I mean, if I was to stand at a little remove and draw, or abstract some of the principles, one would sort of come up with various kinds of complementary definitions of what education is all about. Education as maybe conversions of so many contexts, international, local, regional, South Asian, international, continental, and sort of what one might call sandarbha. Education, as Reena very nicely pointed out, and so did you, Puja, was the idea of education, the city itself as the teacher. So education as, again, a sort of confluence of environments. I'm just sort of groping for various notes towards half definitions of what education is all about. Education as a palimpsest of contexts, education as a confluence of environments, the city itself as the font of education, which provokes me really to actually maybe sort of nudge you all to maybe think about what you think should the role of the classroom be. Considering we are constantly opening doors, opening windows to let all the different kinds of breezes in and to complicate the definition of education and learning and teaching itself. I'm sort of, thinking about the classroom mainly because at the Somaiya School of Art, one of the things that we're trying to do is enshrine the act of experimenting, at the center of the pedagogic experience. And one way in which we are trying to do that is through, of course, samvad, but also through the idea of maybe inculcating what one might call a secular satsang. One of the things that we are trying to do is read collectively in a class. you know. So maybe take a text, even a text like say, you know, Berger, you know, act of seeing, ways of seeing. We look at it, we read it collectively, we try and understand it chapter by chapter, and then most importantly, we try and use the peculiar individual capacities that each student has, you know, language capacities. So for example, if your language mother tongue is Marathi and yours is say Konkani or Urdu, we try and translate, you know, some of these chapters into these languages. And then at the end of it, we stitch it all together to create a kind of a kaleidoscopic book. And then who knows, we might even go ahead and create textual installations. So the point I'm trying to make is that pedagogically, what we are trying to say is that there are no limits. That just as education and the teacher can be anywhere and anybody, similarly the classroom itself is a leaky space. It's a space with porous boundaries, you know. So just a thought that we have been trying to, you know, explore. Your thoughts on this?
Okay, I think the classroom is a space where two things are created. One is art, and then second is the artist. I think these two are equally important, and we know that these two are dependent on three things. One is vision of the institute, second is physical infrastructure available, and then third is the people infrastructure. I think vision is very dependent on the people behind it. Second, physical infrastructure, I think, is a very practical way of looking at it, because in India, we have currently on average an art school would have around 25 or 20 square foot per student for studio space, which is very little on average, versus abroad it's around 70 or 75 square feet in urban art schools across, you know, whether it's Europe or Asia or America. I think this is something that we have to address, this need for physical infrastructure, even for places like classrooms, because that is where then you can actually really experiment and break the walls between different departments of painting and sculpture, because nowadays art is dynamic. There's no one who's only doing painting or drawing or sculpture. So that is, I think, really important. And at our Shantilal K. Somaiya School of Art, our goal is to sort of make it globally facing and set the trend to make our studio space per artist around 100 or 125 square feet, which would be more than abroad and considerably more than what's available here. And I think this is important because I think the physical need would be then set. In terms of personnel, I think the human resource is something that is of utmost importance. Bose just said that, you know, it is people that create culture. I think it is, you know, as per UGC guidelines today, I think 2018 was the new academic personnel law that came out, and it said that if you want to teach, you have to have a master's. And I think these rules are extremely well intentioned, but I think for arts and performing arts, the rule needs to be expanded towards practitioners. I think it is these practitioners who might not have had the time to get a master's degree, but have enough knowledge to be able to prove their, their, of course, that they are experts in their field. And I think that would be very interesting, because it would create more diversity in our teachers, because it is very difficult to get fantastic faculty in the arts in India. We know this, and I think this is because of many various reasons, but I think this would be a very interesting thing to look at. And I think ultimately we need space for experimentation, we need space for play, we need space for breaking rules, because what I've learned about the arts is that ultimately art is defined by what it excludes, and art is constantly pushing the boundaries. So I think breaking that rule needs to be part of curriculum, and it can happen through vision, hardware and software. physical infrastructure and people infrastructure. So I think this is the role of a classroom, to create more than just art. That's my thought.
Excellent. Siddharth, would you like to dwell a little more about your model for the school? Or is it too early?
I think it's too early, but our vision is to have, KNMA is being created. We would hope that we can really fill that museum with artists from Somaiya Vidya Vihar. I think my ultimate vision would be 50 years from now we have artists in the Met and the MoMA, and curated by students from our university, then art critics talking about it, and then 100 years after that, art historians look back on that from our university to talk about that. I mean, for us, honestly, it's to build the ecosystem. There's no other real way of looking at it. And I think that vision comes from my great-grandfather, grandfather, uncle. We all have been looking at ecosystem building rather than just looking at things in a silo, and ecosystem from the grassroots, because unless you create great art schools, you will not have artists to fill those museums that we're trying to build. So we hope to build a school where we can have 1,000 artists at a time coming out of our school. So that's basically the vision.
Excellent.
And so blessed to have you.
No, I'm blessed to be there.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. But what do you feel, Reena?
I mean, hopefully that'll be much sooner than a whole century. Your vision will be realized much sooner because of the way also things are accelerated. But speaking of the classroom, I think, it's both a studio, it could be a lab, a field. I mean, the kind of not just information, but the exploratory nature of art is not just the play in the studio space, but also looking at like multidisciplinary, which you pointed out. I mean, even those of us who were in JJ in the 90s, we had access to all kinds of, say, ceramic department, textile and metal craft. And so in that sense, you always sort of moved between these boundaries and faculties. But I think that is changing so quickly now, because you're looking at the intersection with various other disciplines, say the sciences, it could be, you could do field trips to, say, a factory, you could go to a field, you could go to, and what that does to how you think, because essentially, it's an incubator of ideas, and that's
Excellent,
where we were, where we lacked. I mean, even though I have to say, like, when I was talking about our experience, that there were things that we felt were strongly amiss, and that one of the fundamental things was that we didn't learn to think in a wider context of, so how do you situate your work, how do you frame? Of course, we learned art history, which was the best. I mean, Veena Kotian was fantastic, and that was one of the, I think that in fact changed the way I approached art, because
that's an amazing...
to me, it was like the moment I walked into art history classroom, I knew why I was there. Because before that, there was no real understanding of what is it to lead the life of an artist, how does life and art intersect. It just remains so much as a separate, because you're not just creating objects and products and finished, it's a whole process. And that processual, I think whether it's through, like we had Khoj, and you lived in various contexts and you absorbed through your peers, through exchange. So that kind of is the most generative. And this, each of us have spoken about why the cafe, why this is, because it's the most informal setting where it allows you to take risks, to be vulnerable, to be, to not worry about whether you're, you could be at different stages in your trajectory, and to allow for that safe space. I think the classroom as a safe space, that non-judgmental, all of these things, that the conditions that allow you to grow and develop ideas. I mean, you can only sow the seeds. You can't just try to pull out a plant. You can just allow for that to then grow, nurture it. And so that's, I think, some of the key things which I'm sure I've seen how you think, and yeah, so.
Thanks. Bose?
I feel that's, I look at a larger scale in a way that, the city itself is, for me, it's kind of classroom. Classroom, when you talk about, the physical, when I was studying in Goldsmiths, I was fortunate enough to get almost a 3/4 of this, almost the same size of the space I had. That was a fortunate thing. I could make whatever I want to. Also, I could use the camera, Hazelblad or any, like heavyweight cameras, you could handle it and, you produce your own work. So that's kind of, I would say that to create foundries for everything. You should have an incredible techie guy, you should have a carpenter, you should have a welder. We had that in my college, So it was, and I could go to the factory, and a studio should be almost like a factory. And I like that anti-Warhol statement, or his studio was called factory. And all the community, my friends are my community. The classroom, they are my community, they are the collective. From there, the vision can originate, So for me, these educational system, I need to think broader. We talk about liberalization, whatever, but that is not what I'm talking about. I feel that, at home you can make community. At home you don't understand that school, if you don't understand your children or your parents or your wife, you don't understand the other side, So the same way, school is also working like that. All other participants are important. So I think, as largest sense, I would say diversity is one of the most important key. And the diversity is also reflected in Baroda. That is one of the reasons Baroda was much more dominating. I would say, no, I won't say dominating, but it's kind of visible because the theory was spread out, or the words were spread out. Here it is, I know Akbar, Lakshman, Melli, Tayeb, all these two people's home I used to visit. And I used to take some of the art students as well. These kind of educational thing, one of the most important space to learn is an artist studio. If you get an opportunity, that studio can educate. You should look at the kind of, every studio, you should bring more and more educator as practitioners, as you mentioned.
But,
practitioners.
Allow me to cut you a little here, if you don't mind. I'm just curious to know about whether this desire to build a community was also in some measure one of the drives that led you to the Kochi Muziris Biennale, and then sort of also most importantly to come up with maybe the idea of the Students' Biennale.
It's jumping from one to the another. Anyway, jump cut. So I would say that, like my first, in fact, unrealized project, I would like to say, I was invited by Akbar Padamsi, and Akbar asked me to curate a show in Bombay in '96. So I asked Akbar, why me? He was very much familiar how I acted or lived in Mumbai. I used to visit almost every show. I used to visit everybody's studio, spent a lot of time with my studio also. My home was almost like a adda for all the artists. Have drinks, talk. I used to listen to them more than I talk, I used to watch them. So that didn't happen. The first, I have selected 5 artists, 1 artist backed out, so I decided not to have that show. Then I did Bombay Boys, and Bombay Boys was the first show, but it was called Bombay 17 artists from Mumbai, which was the initial work I showed in Bombay Gallery in Ruya House, then taken to Kochi. It's all destiny. If I talk about Biennale, then Culture Minister of Kerala had visited my home in Mumbai. And that, when he had visited by the evening, I had a conversation with him. He came to raise funds for educational purpose. I cut short that, I said it will take time to go through auction houses and, making funds for the educational scholarship, etc. Since he was there, I told him that, since he was from Kerala, I said, I would like to introduce you to some fantastic minds who works. They are from Kerala, but nobody talks about them in Kerala, or, they are well-known figures. So I called them, and he stayed back at our home, which was incredible. And I have Minister of Culture and Minister of Education stayed back in Mumbai that night, 2010, May 30th night. He asked us, what is the best way? You are all very successful guys. What is the best way you can contribute to the state in cultural terms? Something like that he asked, and it sounds simple, but we suggested a Biennale would be the right thing to do. That was the beginning of it. The seed was, originated or planted in Mumbai, and it is gone to, then government was hugely supportive. And
but how did the idea of the Students' Biennale come around?
Students' Biennale, like my colleague was taking care of the program, and it is important to, since we were working together, we felt that younger generation should get an opportunity. Why we started a Biennale is also needs to know. 1968 we used to have a Trinale in Delhi, which failed to sustain because of the bureaucratic thing. And it was not a curated exhibition. It was a kind of, most of the time, institutions like British Council or, like Royal Vishya, all these people used to bring their own artists and, put together invited artists, not curated exhibition. So, but that was also an important moment in my life. We used to take a train and go and see that. So we wanted to see original art practices, which was impossible to happen in India. There was no great art used to come to India, or we didn't have that kind of opportunity to go and see it in museums. We don't have a museum culture, as you mentioned, KNMA or other places. We need to have more and more museums, more and more exhibition spaces. So we, from there, we felt it is important to have students get an opportunity to experience contemporary artists, thinkers and practitioners coming to Kochi. That moment they can explore and learn. Why not parallel project? That's how it was originated in 2014. The first edition we didn't have, but we have another great program called ABC Art by Children, Art Room, that is also educating younger generation of practitioners. I mean, not practitioners. We create art rooms in schools. Government schools started with the 10 schools. We would like to expand it, but you need manpower and also financial support.
Absolutely.
Also thinking something in Mumbai, very seriously. Hopefully, I'll let you know.
Wow. And what about you, Puja? I mean, considering you have so many visitors in a space like this, and also a conclave like this actually lends itself to so much pedagogic use.
Yeah, so here of course it's very visual because the output is first an exhibition, and then for us it carries forward. Like I feel in every exhibition there are many other subtexts. At least for me, if you're doing an exhibition of an artist, it's not really about creating an aura about the artist or more celebratory like that, but also many different subtexts that it goes into. And also programming for like multiple kinds of people. So I think one of the things, if you talk about classroom, and also I think the disconnect that happens with most when you graduate from art college or whatever, and especially with art history, I feel that it becomes so esoteric in certain ways that you. So how do you bring that also to be just more relatable, because it's possible. It's not it's not like it's not, you know.
Absolutely.
And I do think that theory and practice together is really important. I think that's what we valued in college also. Even for art history, it was like the art history students had to, by the end of it. So when I was studying in college, actually this idea of curator was not really there. Most exhibitions we would do ourselves. The artists would get together, someone would write for somebody. There wasn't this concept that was developed. It was coming in slowly. And I know it was a whole host of also a lot of, if you remember the times in the early 2000s, and a lot of international curators would come and do all that. But anyway, from there, I think in Baroda, one of the very special things for art history students, so they had to curate one exhibition or put together an exhibition from the college only, students. So I think that was also because people who are studying art history are also really living with artists and seeing. I know that's not possible everywhere, but I feel like is that something that is, you know, I think very important, because it cannot be art history taught as art history and even practical taught as practical. Everything has to be together. And so is that something that, you know, how do you bring that into a new, that's something for you to think about probably.
No, absolutely.
And also the other problem with art history, and so much talk is there about decolonization and, you know, I mean, what is the actual shift that one needs to do? I mean, that's the question to really ask. And that I feel comes from local stories. There is maybe a college that would also, you know, look at the local artists, look at performance, look at theatre, look at, say, if you're in Maharashtra, then Marathi literature, theatre, you know, so much of it. That's where only you can shift. If you're just teaching art history or whatever's been taught before in a different language, is not it. But I feel the shift needs to come, because then you look at things from our point of view, no? And you're not looking at it and how it compares to a different art history. So I feel those are
No, absolutely. I wouldn't agree more with you, Puja. And, you know, again, to sort of step back a little and to look at what all we have been discussing, I mean, one of the first sort of clear-cut observation that I have is that we are arriving at different kinds of images which are also metaphors. You know, the idea of the cafe, the idea of the classroom, the primacy of conversation, critical conversation. And this might sound like a little plug for my art school, but I shall say it nonetheless. One of the things that we're trying to do at the Somaiya School of Art is really foster this idea that true knowledge can actually only happen at the crossroads. So it's a space where literature will have an eye to eye with art history, where semiotics will have a handshake with sociology. The point being that these disciplines all belong to the same realm. They might have different forms, different flourishes, but they have a very good opportunity now to talk to each other, and most importantly to replenish each other's quivers, as it were. So the multilingual heritage that we all possess as Mumbaikars, as Maharashtrians and as Indians is something that we are actually looking at a valuable resource. You know, the idea of translation or anuvad is also something that we are trying to pursue in this course, in these two programs that we have presented. You know, the one course, of course, is writing and art criticism, and the other is art history and visual studies. So absolutely, but you know, to go back to the conversation that we were having, and this is a point I made when we had a little conversation at Method last week about the idea that education is not really only about formal structures. It's not only about schools and colleges and universities, but it's also, as all four of you have pointed out, about informal spaces, you know, like these galleries, or like a visit to your studios, or like the biennales, or like the work that Siddharth is doing with all kinds of wonderful apps, which include AI. So, or songs like these. So the point is that, you know, the ecosystem is made of several opportunities to learn from. And if one might, in the space of a classroom or in the shape of an art school, manage to harness all these different enthusiasms, you know, in a strategic way, there is a very good possibility that we might actually come up with a mosaic model of education, which can really sort of, you know, make the difference, the crucial difference. I think we are going to stop here, and thank you so much, all four of you, for your very valuable insights. But we are going to open this out to all of you. Please feel free to bombard them with questions or share your observations. Yes, please introduce yourself as well. Yes. Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Jehangir. I'm also a writer. I'm an artist. Oh, sorry. Sorry, thank you. Hi, I am Devangana. This was so lovely, and I'm always looking for intellectually engrossing conversations, so thank you, all of you. I'm a writer, I'm an artist, I write poetry, but I more importantly run a foundation for autism called Brain Bristle, and we work with a lot of young people across low-income schools of Mumbai with, you know, really talented children and adolescents on the spectrum of autism. I'm curious about the changing nature of art, especially because it's so accessible everywhere through social media, through, you know, artsy and Saatchi art, and it's just become a lot more accessible than what it was when I was growing up. You know, we used to get Heidi that my aunt would send me, and I would look at the pictures and I was like, oh, this is what the Alps looks like, and then I'd try to paint it and write a story about it. But it's changed dramatically. Right. As people who are educators and artists and curators and people who run museums and, you know, galleries, what are your thoughts on what's the current understanding of art, and where are we going to go from here? Because art is everywhere these days. So I'm curious about the present and the future of art.
I think, like we spoke about how basically, I mean, creativity sort of thrives. If you look at how, you know, there was a study done, like, you know, when you're age 2 or in sort of pre-primary kindergarten, you're 98% sort of making associations and, you know, connections, and how that dwindles and, you know, goes down over time. If you're 15, it becomes some 12%, and then 2% when you're, by the time you're age 25. And I'm thinking that art has to be taught creatively. It's you have to keep changing, obviously, like you said, with the changing landscape, that the models of teaching and all of that, the access to what you see, read, how do you approach art making, how do you invest into the understanding of material and what it embodies, how do you teach these things, because how do you listen, how do you, you know, bring in, say, you may bring in activists, you may bring in, and in fact that kind of learning where it's not, because that instructor-based model has changed. It's no longer the content delivery by a particular teacher, an educator. It has to be much more a sort of collaborative learning where each person brings their resources and their sort of ideas to exchange knowledge. And in that sense, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm losing sight of your question, but you're saying that there is so much access, and I think it's also not non-linear, right? It's not that, it's not logical necessarily. So in fact, while we're talking about these different art schools, I felt like JJ also allowed me not having a particular teacher or somebody to look up to. There wasn't a kind of a bandwagon effect. which we also were critical about when it's another institute where, you know, you're seeing that where you have really strong personalities that, you know, other artists tend to sort of follow that. And so it is a very complex way of how do you, because it is so personal, so subjective, so it can't be like one size fits all. So the sort of teaching is going to necessarily have to look at non-standardization methods that are, because one person may be tapping a big field and another person might be doing a deep dive into one thing. And so they may be at different levels of inquiry. So while you have this sort of critical, you know, probing into who's doing what and exchanging ideas, but it's also constantly shifting. And so you can't really slap the frameworks that have existed onto, you have to create new frameworks. It's a shifting ground. I don't know if I'm answering you at all, but I'm just, yes,
Siddharth?
please.
I have something to say about this. I think audience building and the ubiquity of art is the most powerful thing that we can create for the arts ecosystem, is because through audience we will possibly create people who are interested in the translation of image to, like, you're changing your mind about what it means to look at art and view art. And I think that audience building is the most powerful thing. You know, Mr. Bose, at your Biennale, when I first went, I was going through the Biennale with this rickshaw driver. Everywhere I'd stop, he'd come with me and see the show. And I think that was super powerful, because then art is not only for someone who is, you know, from a certain background. It is open and accessible. And I think that ubiquity of art and the image, and then it's up to educators to translate it well. You know, I think that would be super exciting. So yeah, sorry, Bose, I think I was...
You said you are a poet, right? You also you're a writer. Be a good editor. You know, I would say that. I would say
editing
in this world, edit everything. You know, erase everything.
Yes.
Deleting is one of the most beautiful things. That, you know, try to be.
Very true.
You know, that is one of the most important things, because there are so much of information, so much of imageries bombarding you, and this has all the information. As Einstein said, information is not knowledge. Knowledge needs to be transformed, so that you could be able to do it through editing. You know, a great filmmaker is also a good editor, I would say, or a theater person. It's all important to bring it down to the core, understanding the core, and, you know, take it from there.
Excellent. Can you please introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Joanne, and I have been blessed to be in a city where there is an abundance of art, and my education has just begun after I've turned 60 practically. So
You're from Mumbai?
From Mumbai, very much. So the thing is, I think we need to go one step backward, and that is with children. Like, if you see the way, I mean, Reena comes from the same school as I do, and if you see the molding we had, it was very straight, jacketed SSC education, and most of our students who excelled were in other fields. So obviously, I mean, there is a link to one step much before the fine arts education began. And that is again, to my mind, molding minds right from that stage. So I feel so envious when I see these kids going to all these museums and things like that. And thankfully, my kids did have that opportunity. But I think that is where we need to begin. We need to begin with kids right much before fine arts education institutions.
True.
That's an important point, because it's not necessarily the only way of teaching is by, you know, that you learn through seeing through. A lot of us have, you know, literally watched other artists work, fall, make mistakes, fail, and that's a big learning. That's something that you know, you learn a lot from. So I think observation and
I want to
exposure.
just add one more thing. I learned as a kind of scenographer or exhibit or curator, I learned it from Jehangir Art Gallery. What did I learn is how not to do shows. I mean, like, it's kind of, there is no curatorial work is happening.
Right.
There is no selection. It is very, very important. What you learn is there is mediocre. I'm sorry to say that it's my, I learned so much from there, how not to do mediocrity in art making. I think it's looking around is very important. Traveling is important. For students, it's one of the most important aspects is to work with, live with artists, travel. That's the best way of learning,
absolutely.
I would say.
I'm actually thinking of this lovely film I've seen by Pragati Anand called In Search of Fireflies, where it's about a school in rural China, and the students learn through observation and through movement, not through formal education. And it's such an eye-opener, because there are so many different informal, we just celebrated Guru Purnima yesterday. And, the idea that, your mother and your environment and your grandparents are all your teachers. Your society is also a major source. And this might sound really, cloyy, but this is a fact. We learn from various sources. And as Reena and Bose and Siddharth said, there are different ways of actually assimilating information as well, and insights, of course.
I think in terms of the school thing, I want to say that around 10 years ago, Hena Kapadia from Turk and I introduced a curriculum at the Somaiya school where we taught 7th standard kids the independence movement through Indian art, because we wanted to explain to children that art doesn't exist in a vacuum, art carries culture. And it was super interesting because the curriculum before that was just still lives. We took them to galleries, we took them to secondary art market, primary art market, we did the whole thing. And at the end we had a gallery opening where they could sell their work. The show was sold out, of course, all their parents bought everything. But then from there we took that curriculum and we took it to around, at the time it was 8 schools that the Somaiya Trust runs. And we took it to a rural school in Dhanu, we took it to a rural school in Karnataka, and we didn't keep it urban. I think it changed the way a lot of our students were looking at art. And very proudly, 2 or 3 students from that batch that we taught ended up going to design school, which was, I think it is an opening up of the mind, and it gives you then the tools to look at the world differently, especially at that age. So I 100% agree with you, and I hope we'll be able to do more of this curriculum changing as time moves on, because I think there was a statistic that I shared with you on WhatsApp, I think 2-3 days ago, that there was some survey of like 100 municipal schools and only 6 had art teachers in it. So, we need to change it one by one, and we will do it, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
More power to us. Kuntal.
Hi.
Sorry,
My name is Kuntal, and I'm a filmmaker trained at FTII a while back.
Just a second.
Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry.
Mine.
Can we just have his question and then move, if you don't mind?
Do I do it? Go ahead. You want me to go ahead?
Can he? He's just begun. Huh? Thank you so much. Thank you.
I had more of an observation.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, thank you. So my name is Kuntal. I'm a filmmaker from FTII. And for the last 7 odd years, I've been doing a lot of teaching in cinema, practical as well as classroom stuff. And I'm particularly wanted to pick up on what Reena said, because that's been a revelation to me. You talked about a safe space, and you also talked about rigor at some other point. And I just wanted to highlight the kind of revelation I've had creating really solid rigor, but at the same time in an extremely safe space where people are free to know nothing. And people are actually free, slowly, just by honoring and valuing what they are going to bring, it's just amazing the results which happen not just in the classroom but outside the classroom, which shocked me. Because you had students coming up and says, my social life has changed. And I think it lies at the intersection of rigor and safety, because rigor demands that to discover a part of your intellectual prowess.
Right.
And safety of the space allows you to be completely free, I suppose, to fail.
Yes.
In the moment. And that has been really quite something. So I really picked up on that, and I just wanted to sort of highlight that. And I really also feel that because I've seen this, a teacher can either cost a student a lot of time because she or he has actually shut the student down. And it's so subtle, it takes one moment and it's, and the inverse
True.
can also happen. So when you talk about classroom and all of this, I also feel maybe us as teachers need to actually go through certain training to be able to have the privilege of, because it's one thing to be a practitioner.
Yes.
And I think practitioners as teachers are incredibly valuable. But I also feel that the rigor of being able to actually relate to students in a certain way is not part of one's own training as a practitioner or...
Very true.
Thank you.
No, I completely value what you said, because also I think that, to not grade, I mean, maybe it's difficult to not grade, but it's true that, when you're still in your formative, with your ideas, it's at different stages, that I have known of people who've been to some of the finest schools, I won't name them, and they've come back completely perturbed because they said that they have left them not completely handicapped because they are unable to now either paint ever because the school doesn't believe in painting anymore. And I think these hierarchies of mediums are just completely wrong, because even today every medium is as alive and full of possibilities, and we don't need an authoritarian figure to be dismissive of any one or only intellectual, but what about emotional? What about the sensitivity to be able to be in that in-between space where your idea is not completely articulated, and so to allow that safe space for all of these. I won't take more time, but yeah.
No, absolutely. To you, ma'am. Thank you so much
Sorry.
I just wanted to say...
Could you introduce yourself, please?
Sorry?
Could you please introduce yourself?
Oh, Swapna. Just wanted to say, and this may have been covered because I came late, I would like the art schools to teach one thing: how to sell your art, how to promote your art. This may have already been covered. It breaks my heart when I see wonderful, amazing things at an empty gallery at Jehangir, where there's just nobody, and I ask the artist, did you call anybody? No. Do you have a mailing list? No. And this was Professor Vanzari, no less, whose art, the statues were brilliant. I just saw it and I jumped up and down. I said, who did this? But the gallery was empty. That's one thing. The other thing is, talking of children, when I get talking to artists and we both become comfortable, they don't tell me I got the Padma Shri. They say, when I was 9 years old, the school inspector gave me a medal. So I've made it a point personally, if I go to a children's exhibition, to buy something. It doesn't matter what it is. So this is something I wanted to say. That's all.
Thank you.
So art selling is art promoting. Are you taught that?
Sure. We have sort of time for one more question. Nikhil?
Thank you for a wonderful summarizing so many questions which have been there for almost 2 decades now. That's my career so far.
Can you introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Nikhil. I'm an alumni of JJ. Currently, my practice is into arts administration, archiving, documentation, curation is part of it, and art education has been there for almost 15 years of my career right now. I'm kind of proud that Reena mentioned about Mohile Parikh Center and its role in building, shaping what we are doing here right now. So looking at all of this, Bose mentioned about people framing it, and Reena mentioned about the frameworks. It is very crucial that while we have been discussing almost the same things almost in every seminar across the country, and I certainly agree with Reena saying that it's a shifting landscape. But then what kind of framework can be applicable to right now and which can be agile as well? So if you could, and perhaps I'm sure since Abhay is there on the board and looking at the education landscape of the Somaiya Institute, so what kind of frameworks are you looking at and how that can be shaped to sustain, become a sustainable, as well as looking at non-urban educational methodologies? Thank you.
Just wanted to.
This, just a moment, this requires a longer conversation. Yeah, we don't really
Tabling the question was necessary.
No, no, absolutely. We must continue the conversation. But I shall ask Bose maybe.
I started in Mumbai in '86. In the '80s, we used to have 4 galleries in Mumbai. You know, when you talk about private galleries, Pandol, Kemult, and all these places, maybe half the quarter of this place, right? And then Gallery 7, Simrosa Gallery in Bridge Candy, and Jehangir Art Gallery, and Samovar. These are the educational space for an artist to present their work, show their work, and the private galleries always, Simrosa had a different kind of agenda, but other 3 galleries used to have important artists, you know, the progressives to all the new generation practitioners that have been shown. We shouldn't be worried about, you know, consistency or, you know, kind of surprises. Art always gives you surprise. That is, then you can say it is new. That is going to happen. You know, we cannot predict what is going to happen tomorrow. That's the same thing Picasso said, if I know how, you know, what I'm going to paint, then there is no point in painting. So that's what exactly artists with help with, you know, I believe that art ecosystem needs to accept other creative verticals. Poetry, theater, music, film, everything. It's not, you know, just painting or drawing doesn't make you an artist, a contemporary artist. In 1980s, when photography was invented, a French painter said, a French photographer or painter, he said, painting is dead. 1980, right? Still we are painting, still we are working. So everything is transforming into something else. Nothing is dying, I believe. You know, this is what I want to say. And also I want to, okay, yeah.
I actually wanted to respond to Swapna's question. Swapna, yeah. This is a debate that we have at Immerse a lot. Rohit's here. I think Riya is also here from the residency that we run at Somaiya Vidya Vihar. Pricing, I don't think we would want to teach this art of selling art. I think we would want to teach the art of communicating your practice, because that ultimately leads you to be able to sell your work. Another thing that we would also want to teach is also pricing. Now, pricing, I studied at the Art Institute of Chicago, and not once was pricing ever discussed. I know this even today in our contemporary Indian schools, nobody discusses pricing, and our young artists are left completely with shaky ground, not understanding how to price their works. They go to a gallery, think that that's where it's priced, and that's how they price their work. I think that, you know, whenever we discuss with our Immerse residents, we talk about how do you price your work in a way that is, when you know you go to a place, is that place a platform or is that place a marketplace for your work? So I think this communicating your work and pricing your works are extremely practically important parts of the education that ultimately we will have at some point in our BFA or MFA program.
But
Sorry.
It's very important. You know, that question is very important.
Yeah.
It comes to nowadays every day you see there is a residency application is open.
Yeah.
There is education institutions are open. None of our students have no clue how to put together a proposal. It is very important that intellectual part of it as well as that material world, they need to know how to approach a curator, how to approach a museum, how to approach a writer. It is very, very important.
Yeah, that actually
This is not taught in our
It is the
schools.
most, when we do the residency, we have Shireen Gandhi is so generous. She gives her gallery Kemol for one evening for our immersed residents to present their work. The amount of rigor we go through for them to, within 2 minutes, Rohit, within 2 minutes they have to explain their practice, and the amount of distillation of thought and the capacity to be able to communicate. It takes them 3 weeks to sort of prepare, but that 3 weeks is worth a lifetime, because now they can talk about their work to anyone fast and in a way that can actually engage. And I think this is like extremely, extremely important, and it was never taught in art school, at least even at a global level.
Not taught in
Any
art
school.
In any school.
Yeah.
But one more thing I wanted to say was also about the teaching. Like I taught in Baroda and Delhi and here. But one of the main things is also the kind of teachers that you bring in, and in a way it's great that you're starting this because there are more opportunities then. And I think a lot of these institutions, whether it's Delhi College of Art or Baroda or JJ, are all like, the fee structures for, the kind of people who also then go and teach there. That interest needs to be there, maybe like more eclectic from different fields. Those are the kind of problems that you challenges that you might face, in the actual...
90-year-old professor for philosophy, and it was really sad because they used to keep pulling him back, and he would literally say, go do if you haven't attended class, you will do your exam at home. And we would be like, that's so simple. So somebody's going to write at home and come. That was a state of, so really to find good teachers.
Like in Delhi College of Art once, I was talking to these students, just teaching them, and they didn't know like Marcel Duchamp, they didn't know Ramkinkar Beg. So I said, okay, let's just do a session where I just show them slides. I can't tell you how many people sort of came for that from different departments. But interestingly, from the college, there was no support also. Like they couldn't even provide a projector because of some bureaucratic red tape. So to take my laptop with a classroom of 80 people on a small laptop. So I'm just saying, like, a lot of these kind of challenges also of who you bring in, to teach.
Visiting faculty, of course, will do a lot of fresh.
And a lot of private now colleges are actually taking
check out our visiting faculty.
Faculty is good, but you have to curate that also.
Okay, I think the last question before we...
No, I think it might come.
Okay. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Manan. We live between Bali and Mumbai, and recently we launched our own art gallery at Chhatrapati. It's called Am the Collective. The point that I think stood out to me right now is it's fantastic that we're looking at education for artists, which is what we've been discussing all along. But I feel there's a huge requirement for also educating the consumer, the audience, who needs to even understand the art today in the right manner, in the right form, in the right way, because a lot of them are just buying because the architect recommended it, or the interior designer said, oh, this will go well with your wall, which is absolutely not the case. So there's a lot of times I also feel that there is of course a whole lot which absolutely understands this. I completely respect those guys. But I also feel there is a huge need, and I'm saying this on my behalf because it's part of our gallery's mission as well, to try and educate more people who come to the gallery to understand what this art is and why is it like this and what is it about and all the artistry that we're talking about. So I just thought, since we're talking all about educating the artists, there is a big need of also educating the audience.
No, absolutely. It's also, I guess...
Mediators.
it's also No, it's also creating a vibrant ecosystem. Not only the artists, but also art historians, art critics, and the audience, which is also a very, very vital part of the art ecosystem. Yes, a whole community, really.
But I think, sorry.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
No, please.
I think it's interesting you brought up architects, because I think last year there were 1.2 million homes built in Bombay, apartments. Imagine if you were to, educate is the wrong word, but like have like art awareness programs with architects, so they could fill all those 1.2 million homes with emerging art. I mean, you change the whole ecosystem.
Absolutely.
I don't know, it's just
there you go.
a thought, yeah.
So I know at the heart of all this is, I guess, the desire to experiment, to challenge yourself, and all the sedimented givens that you have grown up with. Also the capacity, I think, something that we've not talked about, the capacity to empathize with people who belong to the have-nots, the need to be fragile, also the freedom to fail, which is something that we touched on, very sparingly. And most importantly, I guess, the strength to question, which is very, very vital, very, very important. Sort of I started with good old Oscar Wilde. I think one great guy to actually hold hands with him is Mahatma Gandhi. I'm sure he'll smile at this. Gandhi said something very interesting. He said, and he was not really a great lover of modern art, as you know, hated cinema. But he said something very interesting. He said that live like you are going to die tomorrow and learn like you will live forever. I think this is what we have to take back home, that learning is a continuous process and that we need to invest in it for it to give back all the dividends. Thank you so much for being such an exceptional audience. And we hope to continue these conversations, and we hope we'll get you back. Thank you so much, all of you.